My name is Alma Thomas, and my story is full of different chapters of the things that I went through, such as losing my son when he was 18 to a massive heart attack, being homeless for a while, getting married and then getting a divorce, and then finally, if you notice, I'm laying down, and it's not because I'm tired or I'm on your 600-pound life, but I had a massive stroke in 2021 that left my right side immobilized. In 2009, my son suffered a massive heart attack at 18 years old. One morning, I woke up to go to the bathroom, and he said, "Can I have some water?" And I said, "Okay." And he said, "Ma, I don't feel well. Call the ambulance." And he was diagnosed with a heart disease at 13 years old, and they didn't expect him to make it from when he was 13. We spent 8 weeks in a hospital in the city, and then they gave him a pacemaker, and he came home, and he was able to do everything that he wanted to do. He wanted to learn to drive. He wanted to go on an airplane, and he was able to do all that. He was very bright. He loved education. It was a rough time for me after he passed away. If you know anything about the African American community and church, mental health is considered taboo. It's okay if you take care of the physical symptoms, if you have high blood pressure, diabetes, and the doctor prescribes you medication. But when you're talking about your mental health symptoms, they can't see. They're saying it's all in your head. What goes on in this house stays in this house. We don't share our feelings with each other. And since I was a minister, my spiritual being was all right with knowing where my son was at. But the mom in me was suffering. The mom in me didn't know how I was going to handle it. People tell you, you're so strong, I wouldn't be able to do it. And on the outside, everything is all right, but on the inside, just slowly dying. And I had to learn that despite stigmatism, legalism, I had to seek help, because on April 17th, 2009, the months after my son passed away, on his first birthday in heaven, I decided to unalive myself, not because I wanted to be unalive, but because I wanted to spend my son's birthday with him, his first birthday in heaven. I put a whole bottle of pills into my hand, and I was going to take them until I heard a still quiet voice say, "If you do it, you'll never see him again." And I put the pills back in the bottle and cried myself to sleep. But that was the day that I realized that I had to talk to somebody. And even though I knew the stages of grief, because I minored in psychology in college, knowing the stages of grief and going through the stages of grief, two different things. I was actually started to go to church because of my son. When he was 2 years old and we wasn't going to church, he started telling us, "Well, you gotta praise God, you gotta praise God." So we thought he was playing. So we played along with him and was praising God, but he praised God until he fell out. And then a couple of years later, I was at a store, and a woman said to me, "Does that little boy go to church?" And I was like, "We don't go on a regular basis." And she was like, "Get him in church because he has a special call on his life." And we started going to church, and then that's when I discovered that I also had the call to ministry on my life, and that's when I began to be an ordained minister. I was ordained and became a minister. I was ordained as a minister about 22 years ago. It was surreal because when I found out that I was pregnant, I was already 7 months pregnant. And I went to the doctor because I wasn't feeling well, and I thought I had the flu. And the doctor was like, just take a pregnancy test before I prescribe you any medication. So I was like, okay, but I'm not pregnant. Then he came back and he said I was pregnant, and I was so excited because I was already 26 years old when I got pregnant with my son. So I was, very excited, very happy. When I held him in my arms, it was just, I forgot all the pain that I went through. I forgot everything, and I dedicated my life to taking care of my children. I worked in the child care field. I was a Head Start teacher for 32 years until I retired when I had the stroke. So I was able to bring my children to work with me, spend the summers with my children. It was an exciting time. That I love children, and I wanted to have 15 of them, but I was only able to have two. I had one and I adopted one. He passed away on February 13th. I woke up about 2 o'clock in the morning and I went to the kitchen to get some water. And when I passed by his room, he was like, "Ma, you have any extra water?" So I was like, "No, I just have this bottle," but I gave it to him. And he said, "Mommy, I don't feel good." Call the doctor. And then as they were loading him into the ambulance, he was like, "Ma, get my phone because I think that I'm gonna be in the hospital a while." So they put him in the back of the ambulance, and I rode in the front with the driver. But I kept hearing codes, and something in my spirit wasn't sitting right. And I called my mother and my sisters and told them to hurry up and get to meet me at the hospital because I feel something's not right. Then when we got out of the ambulance, they were working on him, trying to revive him. And then when they put him in the back, the doctor came back and said, "We have a very sick young man here." And then about 5 minutes later, the doctor came back and said, "Are you here by yourself?" And I said, "Yes, Ma, I'm here by myself, but my family is on the way." And he said, "Okay, when your family gets here, I'll talk to you." And then I called my mom again. I was like, "Where are you guys?" Because I think that Tyshawn is dead. And they was like, "Don't say that. Don't say that. Why are you saying that?" I was like, "Because the doctor said he wants to talk to me when y'all get here." And then when they got there, they brought me into a room, and the doctor said words that no parent wants to ever hear a doctor say. He said, "We did all we could do, but we couldn't save him." And I just remember falling out on the hospital floor and yelling and screaming for it seemed like hours. We came back out and we was sitting in the waiting room, and it was like I didn't want to leave him there. And finally my mother was like, "There's nothing else we can do. Let's go home." And that was the darkest time of my life, especially going through the funeral and standing there watching them lower his body into the ground. That was the hardest thing that I ever had to do in my life. And then that's when on April 17th was his first birthday in heaven. And I woke up that morning and I was like, I wonder if my grandma baked him a cake. I wonder if the angels are singing happy birthday to him. And then I decided, I was like, for 18 years I have made his birthday very special, and this is no different. This is a very special birthday. It's his first birthday away from me in heaven, and I want to make sure he's okay. And that's when I was going to unalive myself, and I put all my high blood pressure pills into my hand and I held them up to my mouth. And that's when I heard a still voice say, "If you do it, you'll never see him again." And I put the pills back in the bottle and I cried myself to sleep that day. But that was the day that I realized that I needed help, that my spiritual man was all right, but the mom in me was suffering silently. People were saying to me, "I don't know how you're so strong. I never would have been able to do it." And I just went through the motion of doing it. But inside, I was silently dying. And I was calling out for help. It's like nobody understood. Like people, I was having terrible thoughts. Like people would come and say, "At least he's in a better place." And being a minister, I knew he was in a better place. But you don't want to hear that then. And I would be thinking, okay, why don't you send your little Johnny and your little Susie to the better place and let my Tyshawn come home? Because when you walk past his empty bedroom, when you walk past that empty seat at the dining room table, you tell me if it's a better place now. And people were saying, my 98-year-old grandfather had a heart attack and God saved him. And I was saying in my mind, like, God, why did you save him? But took my 18-year-old son who was just beginning to live. And I knew that I couldn't keep having thoughts like this because they were killing me. And I went to the EAP, which is the mental health component at my job, and I spoke to someone, and she was able to tell me what triggers me. I knew the stages of grief because I studied them in school, but it's different than reading a book about the stages of grief and going through the stages of grief. One day you're accepting it all, and then the next day you're back at denial again. And when you read the stages of grief, you think you're gonna go through acceptance, bargaining, depression, and get to acceptance and you'll be okay. But that's not the way that grief works. Like I said, the African American community and church, it's a stigma to need mental health. It's okay if you have high blood pressure and diabetes and you can take medication and it's okay. But then when you tell them that you're having anxiety, depression, you don't want to get up in the morning, you're having a panic attack, then they say that's all in your head. If you love God, you'll get through it. What goes on in this house stays in this house. We don't talk about our feelings with strangers. They want to fix the problem. They don't want to hear about it anymore. It's like, okay, we had the funeral, it's over now, let's all go back to our lives. They can go back to their lives, but my circle was forever broken. So it's okay not to be okay. After I spoke with the EAP counselor, I was able to turn my pain into passion, and I started a scholarship in my son's honor, the Tyshawn Thomas Friends and Family Scholarship. And to date, I've given out 17 $500 scholarships to African American boys of single parents. My apartment building caught on fire, but my apartment didn't burn, but the whole row of apartments were condemned, and we had to move out. And so I became homeless at no fault of my own. And I went through the system, and they placed me in a bed motel, and we only could stay there, my daughter and I, for an hour until we were bitten by bed bugs. We saw bed bugs, and we went back to my mom's house, and my mom lives in a 1-bedroom senior citizen apartment, so we all had to stay there until they found me another apartment. The stroke was on April 23rd, 2021. I went to bed on April 23rd, and when I woke up, I felt different. Like I didn't have a headache or anything. It's just like in a minute, I felt different and couldn't move my right side at all. And I went to the hospital, and the doctors gave me a 99% chance of dying and a 1% chance of living. The nurse wanted to hold my hand while I transpire. They called my family to my bedside and told them if they ever wanted to see me alive again, that they would have to come to the hospital. But in my spirit, I did not believe this stroke was unto death. And I told the nurse, no, I don't want you to hold my hand. And I stayed in ICU for 3 days, and then I moved up to a regular room. I stayed in the hospital for 2 months, and then I moved to the nursing home. I stayed in a nursing home for 2 years. My experience in the nursing home was horrible. They left me in my own feces for hours, and it was so hard for me to get released from there because They thought I was going to be in there for the rest of my life, but it was the conditions were terrible. I wasn't getting changed, and I would have to get on Facebook and tell people, call this number because they're not taking care of me. They're feeding me rotten bananas and mushrooms that I'm allergic to. So it was a very bad experience. But what I learned from that experience is that on April 23rd, when I laid down, I had all kinds of thoughts of what I was going to do on April 24th. It taught me that don't put off for tomorrow what you can do today, that tomorrow is not guaranteed to you, but I had a choice. I could choose to be bitter or better, and I chose to be better. Before I had the stroke, I wrote two solo books by myself. After the stroke, I've written 4 books. But what's different this time is that I write on my right side, and this time I wrote all 4 books on my left side with one finger on my telephone. I refuse to give up. I embrace the things that I can do. I accept the things that I cannot do. About 20 years ago, it was prophesied that I wasn't just local, I was going to be global. And 20 years ago, I dreamed of flying all over the place, spreading the gospel. And then, life went on. And a year ago, before he passed away, my apostle told me that I was an ambassador, that I wasn't just for local, I was global. By this time, I had the massive stroke, and I'm laying in my bed and I'm thinking, okay, God, I know you're going to heal me because you promised you were going to heal me, but you're going to heal me first, and then I'm going to fly all around the world, going to the nations. And then I want you to know, since January of 2024, I've spoken on over 200 podcasts, conferences, and seminars, inspiring people and motivating people. The reason why I want to show up like I am, my transparent, authentic self, is because I want people to know that we go through bad chapters in life. We have disappointment, we have rejection, we have failures, but you don't have to give up, that there's purpose in every one of us. I've written a book on surviving a stroke against all odds, with all the things that I went through, and I'm still standing, I'm still here, I'm still preaching the gospel, I'm still teaching Bible school, and I'm doing all of this from my bed in my home. So if you have 2 arms and you have 2 legs, do whatever dream you have, that everything that you want is within your reach. You have to just go for it. I got married and I did everything right. He said, I want to get closer to God. He understood my morals and my values, and he went along with everything, and we knew each other for 2 years before we got married. And when we got married, it was like I was looking for Mr. Goodbar, but I found me a Snicker, and I found out that he was addicted to, and he was stealing everything out of my house, and I guess giving it to the pawn dealers because it would be gone until the first of the month, and then I would find it somewhere where I looked for it hundreds of times. And when I finally put him out and went to the bill collectors was coming, and I found out that all the bills that he was supposed to be paying, that he wasn't paying them. So after I put him out, I had to make all these payment arrangements. It even got to the point where we had a joint bank account and just had put the money in it from our wedding, and he stole that. I had to get a divorce, which is another taboo subject in the church, but I had to do what was best for my child and I. I have a daughter. She's impressionable, and I didn't want her to see her mother settling for anything, because my daughter, she's my why. She's why I hold on. She's my caregiver, and I want her to see the strength and the resilience that no matter what you go through in life, we're going to go through some things. Life is a journey, and it's full of detours and curves, and sometimes it's just like if you're going on a trip and you miss your turn, you don't pull over to the side of the road and say, I'm not going no more. But we have this new invention called the GPS that you put in your where you want to go, your destination. And even though you missed a turn, when you put it into your GPS, it says rerouting, rerouting, rerouting. Well, sometimes you got to reroute your life. It doesn't go the way you planned it, but you don't give up. We met online, and when I met him, I like that he understood my values, that you don't want to do, you're not ready for, but he understood my morals, my ethics. He said he understood the call that I had on my life, that my life is not my own. My life belongs to the Lord. I go where he wants me to go. I say what he wants me to say. And he said he understood all that. But the minute we got married, it was just like he changed. He no longer wanted to go to church like he said he did. He didn't want to have a relationship with God like he said he did. And I did not know that he was I definitely would not have married him. He was doing things that was suspect. Like he was on disability. So when he would receive his check at 12 o'clock at night, he would go and say he was getting his money, and he wouldn't show up for 2 or 3 more days. And then when he came back home, he was supposed to be paying the bills, but when he came back home, he was broke. Actually, when the apartment building caught on fire, he was out by then. After I put him out, the drug dealer, he owed him money, and he came and he knocked on my door, and he was like, well, tell your husband that I'm looking for him. And I said, well, he doesn't live here anymore. I was like, so don't come here looking for him. In the beginning, when we were dating, we got along fine, but after we get married, we didn't get along so fine, because I would be telling him, oh, I thought you were going to church, and on the second Sundays, I used to preach, and on those days, he would be playing loud cursing music. Like, can you turn that down? So we would argue about that, argue about him not going to church. And the thing that really hurt is that he made it true. A lot of people told me not to marry him, and I married him anyway. So we only stayed married 3 months, and then they were saying, basically, we told you so, we told you so. So I had to go through that public humiliation of, we told you so, we told you not to marry him, because he wasn't already in the church. You was looking at his future and the potential you thought was in him, and we told you not to marry him. So that was another thing, the public humiliation. Before I had the stroke, I've written Dream Killers, which talked about the things that can kill your dreams, like low self-esteem, doubt, fear, procrastination, childhood mistakes, failures, people speaking over your life. You'll never be anything. You always be like your mother. You always be like your father. And those are things that can kill your dream. And then from the waiting room to the recovery room, I started writing that book when the doctor came into the waiting room and said, we did all we could do, but we couldn't save him. I've been a part of about 20 anthologies, and after my stroke, I wrote a book on faith, a book on Bible school leadership, and surviving a stroke against all odds, which comes with a journal. One of my favorite Bible sayings is by the 3 Hebrew boys, and as they was getting ready to go to the fire, they said, even if my God don't do it, I know that he's able. So there's nothing impossible with God. There's nothing impossible if you believe in yourself. There's a saying that says, if my mind can conceive it, my heart can believe it, then I can achieve it. No, we talked about everything. We talked about the 32 years that I spent in the classroom as a Head Start teacher. I love children, and I love ministering to children and women, because when you start young with a child, imputing in them that they can do anything, don't allow life to stop them. When you have some disappointments, you have some detours in life, jump over each hurdle, reach for the stars, don't give up. And with women, I encourage them that I've been through some things. I know how you feel. I know that sometimes you feel hopeless. Sometimes you feel like you're just not going to get through this thing. You don't know. But find somebody to talk to, somebody that's certified. Don't let people steer you away from therapy. Don't suffer in silence.